Night fell over an ancient city, and in its silent darkness, a voice long forgotten began to whisper. What if I told you that nearly 2 millennia of silence have just been shattered by the hum of a machine? In what once was thought lost forever, charred scrolls and strange ancient symbols are now speaking, revealing secrets so astonishing, even terrifying. Today, we step into that moment, the moment when artificial intelligence unlocked the hidden languages of our past and exposed truths no one expected. This is ancient language decoded by an AI. What it revealed is terrifying. In the year 79 after Christ, the Roman city of Herculaneum was swallowed by a volcanic apocalypse when Mount Vesuvius violently erupted. Entire streets, homes, and libraries were buried in burning ash. Among the ruins, archaeologists discovered something remarkable: hundreds of ancient papyrus scrolls. But they were charred, carbonized, turned to black stone. Too fragile to open, too precious to destroy. For nearly 2,000 years, those scrolls sat in silence, unreadable, untouchable, until in the year 2023, everything changed. A global scientific competition, the Vesuvius Challenge, called on researchers to decode the scrolls using artificial intelligence. And that's when it happened. A single Greek word emerged from the darkness, porphyra, meaning purple. It was the breakthrough. One by one, more words followed, phrases, sentences, and finally, a voice. Philodemus, an ancient Epicurean philosopher, writing about life, pleasure, and a kind of truth that felt unsettling. Because buried within those scrolls wasn't just philosophy, there were hints, clues, suggesting knowledge that had been deliberately hidden or worse, erased. What if those scrolls weren't meant to survive? What if they were warnings? And now, what happens when those voices from the fire begin to speak again? Buried beneath layers of ash and forgotten time, the ruins of Herculaneum lay in silence for nearly 2,000 years. Then, in the mid-18th century, something astonishing emerged. Deep inside a grand Roman villa, archaeologists uncovered hundreds of scrolls, charred black, fragile as ash, impossible to open without crumbling into dust. They became known as the Herculaneum papyri. For centuries they were considered untouchable. No human hands could read them. No ink could be seen. These were voices of the past, trapped in a prison of carbon, that is, until artificial intelligence entered the scene. In the year 2023, a bold challenge was issued, the Vesuvius Challenge, a $1 million prize offered to anyone who could digitally unroll and read the scrolls without ever opening them. Enter Luke Farritor, a 21-year-old student who used a machine learning model to scan the scans, searching for the faintest contrast, the ghost of ink that human eyes could not see. And then it happened. One word appeared, porphyrus, meaning purple, a color, a single word. But it cracked open a world. Farritor teamed up with Youssef Nader and Julian Schilliger. Together, they trained neural networks, refined algorithms, and by February of the year 2024, they had revealed over 2,000 letters from one scroll alone. The scroll spoke in Greek, and the voice behind it. A philosopher named Philodemus, an Epicurean thinker, writing about life, pleasure, and the meaning of existence. For the first time in nearly 2 millennia, the words of a man silenced by fire were heard again, and not whispered, spoken. Artificial intelligence had not just helped us read the past, it resurrected it. From the smoldering ruins of Roman villas, we now shift to the scorched sands of ancient Mesopotamia. Long before Latin, long before Greek, another language carved itself into clay, a language made of wedges, lines, and silence. Cuneiform. It is the oldest writing system we've ever found, dating back over 5,000 years. In the libraries of Babylon and Nineveh, the Akkadians recorded everything: royal decrees, astronomical data, epic poems, even tax receipts. Over 500,000 cuneiform tablets now sit in museum vaults across the world. But here's the catch, most of them remain unread. Why? Because Akkadian, the language they used, is brutally complex. Only a few hundred scholars on Earth can translate it, and even they are overwhelmed by the sheer volume of texts until now. In the year 2023, researchers from Tel Aviv and Ariel University trained an artificial intelligence model to read Akkadian like a living scholar. It could recognize wedge patterns, contextual meanings, and even grammatical shifts. Like a digital archaeologist, it began decoding ancient contracts, political dispatches, and parts of the legendary Epic of Gilgamesh. Another team, led by Steve Knipe, processed over 130,000 texts, using a neural engine to spot inconsistencies, patterns, and linguistic clues buried for millennia. This wasn't just decoding language, this was decoding civilization. And in doing so, we didn't just learn about ancient kings or cities, we glimpsed the minds that built the first organized societies, minds not so different from our own. The past, once thought to be silent, was becoming louder with every line translated. From Babylonian clay, we now descend into the caves of Qumran, where parchment whispers through dust. In the late 1940s, Bedouin shepherds stumbled upon one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 20th century, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Over 900 manuscripts, some written over 2,000 years ago, hidden inside jars, buried in caves overlooking the Dead Sea. These scrolls contained ancient versions of biblical texts, apocalyptic visions, and rules followed by a mysterious Jewish sect known as the Essenes. Scholars believe they had uncovered the earliest fragments of the Old Testament, but one scroll, the Great Isaiah Scroll, held a mystery. It was always assumed to be written by a single scribe. The handwriting looked consistent until artificial intelligence took a closer look. In the year 2021, researchers at the University of Groningen digitized thousands of samples of just one Hebrew letter, Aleph. They fed them into a neural network, not to translate the scrolls, but to study the writer. What they found was astonishing. Subtle shifts in pressure, line shape, and flow revealed that two scribes, not one, had worked on the scroll. Human eyes never noticed, but AI could. It was the first time emotion, fatigue, and collaboration had been detected in a 2,000-year-old document. We weren't just reading the scrolls, we were learning about the people who wrote them, their patterns, their stress, even their rhythm. AI didn't just recover ancient words, it resurrected the hands behind them. As we leave the scrolls of the desert, we now journey east to the fertile plains between the Indus and the Ganges. Welcome to the Indus Valley civilization, a society that thrived over 4,000 years ago, long before the pyramids rose or Rome was even a dream. This was a civilization of intricate cities, flowing water systems, and, perhaps most remarkably, no signs of warfare. But there was something else, something that's baffled scholars for centuries. The Indus script, strange, elegant symbols carved into seals, etched onto pottery, and inscribed on tablets. Dozens of them, hundreds. But no Rosetta Stone, no translation. No agreed upon language. For decades, the debate raged. Was this even a writing system? Then in 2009, Professor Rajesh Rao and his team introduced a bold new idea, a statistical approach called the Markov model. It analyzes the probability of sequences to determine whether the symbols followed structured, language-like rules. And guess what? They did. The symbols weren't random. They formed patterns, grammatical structures, suggesting they were a written language. But we still didn't know what they said. Then came the machine learning revolution. New AI models trained on image recognition began to isolate and catalog the symbols across thousands of artifacts. Some researchers even reported 80% accuracy in separating and classifying the glyphs. But the biggest problem remains, most inscriptions are very short, often just a handful of symbols. Still, Progress is happening, and now with every newly unearthed seal and every deep learning pass, AI edges closer to speaking the language of a long-lost people, one that built without conquest, traded without borders, and wrote without war. A peaceful world now whispering through silicon as we follow the Nile southward. Past the lands of pharaohs and pyramids, we arrive in a lesser-known kingdom, ancient Meroa, in present-day Sudan. From around 300 years before Christ to 400 years after, the Meroitic civilization flourished. Its queens and kings built pyramids, traded across Africa, and carved two distinct scripts into stone, one hieroglyphic for monuments and one cursive for everyday use. But here's the enigma: no one can read them. For over a century, the Meroitic language has resisted decipherment. No bilingual texts, no Rosetta Stone, just symbols left behind, stubborn and silent. Enter AI. At the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, researchers at the CSAIL lab are now retooling neural networks that cracked Ugaritic and Linear B, but this time they're applying them to the Meroitic puzzle. These models don't need translations. They hunt for structure, repetition, grammar-like order, and statistical links between symbols. And even without knowing what the symbols mean, the algorithms are identifying rules behind their use, rules that suggest logic, language, and meaning. We're not there yet. The inscriptions are short, the data is scarce. But the AI is learning, and each run brings us closer to unlocking what the kings and queens of Nubia once wrote, and why. The Forgotten Kingdom is staring, one glyph at a time. Now we turn east, into the heart of ancient Iran. Here, more than 5,000 years ago, around 3,100 years before Christ, a civilization emerged, building cities, farming the land, and leaving behind something unprecedented: Proto-Elamite. It's one of the world's oldest known writing systems, etched into clay tablets in a script that predates nearly all others. Dozens of wedge-like symbols, arranged with eerie consistency, have puzzled scholars for over a century. Why? Because we still can't read it. There's no translation key, no known descendant language. Proto-Elamite is a dead script, until now. Researchers from the University of Oxford introduced a breakthrough using reflectance transformation imaging, an advanced technique that digitally captures ultra-fine surface details of the tablets. Every groove, every scratch, becomes visible in astonishing detail. Then came the game changer, deep learning AI. By training models on the digitized tablets, AI began spotting patterns invisible to the human eye, like how numbers were recorded, trade entries were logged, and which symbols clustered together consistently. These weren't random scratches, they were structured, intentional, language-like. And while we still don't know exactly what these ancient scribes wrote, we now know they were writing something real. The Proto-Elamite script is beginning to whisper, the clay is speaking, and we're finally listening. We leave the highlands of Iran and drift into the golden sands of ancient Egypt. Here, more than 5,000 years ago, a different kind of writing emerged, not practical or terse, but divine, ornate, symbolic. Egyptian hieroglyphs. These weren't just letters, they were living art, language forged in images, meant to be read by both humans and gods. For centuries, deciphering them required lifetimes. Scholars pored over obelisks, tomb walls, and dusty papyri, working by candlelight and intuition. Then, in the year 2020, everything changed. Google Arts and Culture, in partnership with Egyptologists and AI developers, launched Fabricius, the world's first AI-powered hieroglyph translator. Using a massive data set of known glyphs, machine learning was trained to spot symbols, match them to known meanings, and even suggest possible phrases. Something that once took months could now be done in minutes. But Fabricius did more than decode glyphs, it taught. One mode guides users step by step through the language of the pharaohs. Another lets you play and test your own translations. But the work mode, that's where the real magic happens. Here, AI detects hieroglyphs in photos, suggests meanings, and pulls from Gardner's List, the foundational guide to hieroglyphics. It's not perfect, because hieroglyphs are more than just phonetics. They encode ideas, rituals, even emotions. But thanks to AI, scholars and curious minds around the world now have the tools once reserved for elite Egyptologists. The walls of ancient temples are speaking louder than ever before. From the riverbanks of the Nile, we journey across the vast Pacific, landing on one of the world's most remote and enigmatic places. Easter Island, known for its towering moai statues, few know it also hides a forgotten script. A system of writing so unique, it defies all known logic. It's called Rongorongo. Discovered in the 1860s, this script was carved into wooden tablets with a distinctive style, reverse boustrophedon, a mirror writing system where lines alternate direction with each row. But here's the problem. Only a couple dozen of these tablets survive. There's no Rosetta Stone, and the last speakers of the island's ancient language vanished long ago. For decades, experts debated, was Rongorongo a true script or symbolic artwork? Then, in the 21st century, AI stepped in. Using machine vision, researchers trained deep learning algorithms to segment, isolate, and catalog individual glyphs. These weren't guesses. The models compared structure, curvature, and repetition, spotting language like patterns invisible to the human eye. Some symbols resembled stars, birds, tools. Others were completely abstract. Could they be calendars, ritual instructions, creation myths? We still don't know. But now, for the first time, these wooden voices, silenced for centuries, are being heard. AI won't give us instant answers, but it's building the tools, the maps, and the possibilities. And who knows, maybe somewhere within those glyphs is the origin story of a people who crossed an ocean long before history was written. Now, we travel to ancient China, more than 3,000 years ago during the Shang Dynasty, where kings and diviners spoke, not through ink and paper, but through flame and bone. This was the age of the oracle bones. Turtle shells and ox scapulae were heated until they cracked. The shapes were interpreted by spiritual advisors, messages from the gods about war, harvest, birth, and death. But etched into these bones was something even more enduring, the earliest known Chinese writing, the oracle bone script. Thousands of bone fragments have survived, but reading them? That's been a slow and intricate puzzle until now. In 2024, a breakthrough changed everything. Hai Su Guan and his team developed a deep learning AI system called OBSD, a diffusion-based model trained on over 140,000 glyph samples. What made it powerful wasn't just its speed, it was its sensitivity. It could detect partial carvings, faded etchings, even match modern Chinese equivalents with impressive accuracy. Some symbols were barely visible to the human eye, but AI caught them all. And that wasn't all. Another platform, Tencent's Oracle Bones corpus, let researchers examine bones side by side, tracking glyph evolution in real time. The result: ancient records once locked in silence are now revealing everything from royal decrees to personal prayers. Ironically, the bones meant to speak to the future are now being answered by it. And in that dialogue between fire, machine, and human, new history is being born. From the bone oracles of Shang China, we shift now to the sunlit shores of the Mediterranean, to Greece and Syria, where two ancient scripts, Linear B and Ugaritic, once held the secrets of forgotten civilizations. Linear B, used in Mycenaean Greece between 1450 and 1200 years before Christ, was the earliest form of written Greek. For decades, it defied translation, until a British architect turned linguist named Michael Ventris cracked it in 1952 using sheer intellect and persistence. But now, the machines have stepped in and they work even faster. In 2019, a team at Massachusetts Institute of Technology including Jaime Luo and Regina Barzilay, trained an artificial intelligence model to decode Linear B by aligning it with modern Greek. The results were stunning. The system translated more than 67% of shared words, called conates, between the two languages. What once took decades now takes seconds. And in the city of Ugarit, located in modern-day Syria, archaeologists found clay tablets marked with a strange cuneiform script, Ugaritic, an ancient Semitic language. It too was undeciphered until AI entered the scene. In 2010, researchers built a model that compared Ugaritic to Hebrew, leveraging pattern recognition to map out linguistic roots. Within hours, the system was translating sections of the text, an accomplishment that would have taken years by traditional means. These aren't just languages, they're time machines. They contain legal records, poetry, royal decrees, even the seeds of biblical text. By teaching AI to understand the structures of ancient communication, we're doing more than decoding history. We're restoring voices from a world that once fell silent. Now we leap from script to symbol, from stone tablets to something etched on a much grander canvas. Welcome to the deserts of Peru. Here, across miles of barren sand and rock, lie massive geoglyphs, some shaped like animals, others like abstract shapes, spirals, or humanoid figures. They are known as the Nazca lines, and they were created more than 2,000 years ago by the ancient Nazca civilization. Some of these giant artworks stretch hundreds of meters across. Some can only be seen from high above, leading to decades of speculation. Were they ritual paths, astronomical maps, or signals meant for something not from Earth? For decades, archaeologists used planes and foot patrols to study the lines. Then, in 2024, everything changed. A team from Yamagata University in Japan partnered with IBM Research to train an artificial intelligence system on thousands of aerial photographs of the Nazca region. In just 6 months, the AI discovered over 300 new geoglyphs, a massive leap compared to the 430 found over an entire century. How? Because AI can spot subtle patterns invisible to the human eye. Distortions in the soil, faint outlines hidden by time and erosion. These machines recognize shapes, symmetries, and symbolic intent faster and more accurately than any human could. Some of the new figures were small, just a few meters. Others depicted creatures we've never seen before, and many were aligned along ancient footpaths, suggesting they were meant to be seen not from the sky, but from the ground. AI didn't answer all the questions. It didn't prove aliens carved these lines, but it made one thing very clear. There's far more here than we ever realized, and the messages of the Nazca. They're not lost. They were just waiting to be seen. From carved lines in the desert, we now move high into the Andes, where the Inca civilization once ruled vast territories without writing. At least, that's what scholars believed for centuries. Because unlike other ancient empires, the Incas didn't leave scrolls or stone tablets. Instead, they left knotted cords, complex systems of wool strings known as khipus. At first glance, they look like accounting tools, color-coded strands used to record taxes, census data, and livestock numbers. But what if they were far more than that? Recent breakthroughs suggest khipus were a language, a full system of communication that encoded stories, history, and identity. In the 2010s, anthropologist Sabine Hyland uncovered Spanish colonial records describing khipus as messages passed between villages, possibly even syllabic in structure. But in 2023, AI took this further. Using deep learning models, researchers analyzed thousands of surviving khipus, mapping not direction, spacing, material, and color. Patterns began to emerge. Certain arrangements repeated, others changed in rhythm, like spoken language. Could these knots hold syllables? Grammar? Narrative? Statistical models began decoding what looked like sentence structures. And the AI started distinguishing between economic records and possible poetic or narrative threads. The result, a growing belief that the Incas didn't just count with their khipus, they spoke with them. And now, centuries later, machines are learning their language. The Inca didn't write on walls, but they wove their words into thread. And finally, we're listening. Imagine a book that hides another book, not through riddles or symbolism, but literally. Welcome to the world of palimpsests, ancient manuscripts where the original text was scraped off and overwritten with something new, often to save precious parchment. For centuries, what lay beneath these overwrites was considered lost forever until now. In the early 2000s, researchers began using multispectral imaging, a technique that captures different wavelengths of light invisible to the human eye. This allowed them to see faded inks buried beneath the surface. But in 2022, everything changed. A team led by Anna Stoyanovska and David Messinger applied deep generative AI networks to palimpsests. The result? Not just visibility, but legibility. One of the most stunning breakthroughs came from the Archimedes palimpsest, a 13th century Christian prayer book that concealed lost writings from the legendary Greek mathematician Archimedes, including a treatise on infinity and physics. AI peeled back the layers, reconstructing text line by line without damaging the precious page. This technique is now being scaled to unlock hundreds of overwritten documents, from Byzantine medicine manuals to lost philosophical dialogues, and with every scan, lost voices reappear. Philosophers, scientists, scribes who lived 2 millennia ago now speak again. Where ink tried to erase, AI revives. Hidden deep within the misty hills of southern China, there once existed a language known only to women. A language whispered, not shouted, written in secrecy, passed from mother to daughter across centuries. It was called Nüshu, which means women's writing. Created by the Yao women of Hunan province, Nüshu flourished in a world where women were barred from formal education. With no access to traditional literacy, they invented their own, a script written in delicate strokes on fans, cloth, and paper. They used it to compose poems, songs, and letters of grief and hope. But by the early 21st century, Nüshu was nearly extinct, until artificial intelligence stepped in. In 2025, researchers at Dartmouth College launched the Nüshu Rescue Initiative. Using GPT-4 Turbo and a modest dataset, just 35 example texts, they trained a model to translate Nüshu into standard Chinese with nearly 50% accuracy. Another team went further. They simulated how the script might have evolved across generations, mapping the organic shifts in tone, curvature, and meaning. Suddenly, the songs and sorrows of the Yao women, once nearly lost, began to resonate again. Not just as text, but as living testimony. AI wasn't just reading a language, it was restoring a legacy, a culture of resilience, a voice that defied erasure. From paper fans to neural networks, the hidden hearts of these women are speaking louder than ever. Some mysteries don't whisper, they mock. In the archives of human knowledge lies a manuscript so bizarre, so inexplicable, that scholars have debated its very nature for over a century. A book filled with unknown plants, cosmic charts, and nude women bathing in green pools. Its pages are coated in swirling symbols from a language never seen before, or since. This is the Voynich manuscript. Carbon dated to the 15th century, the manuscript has no known author, no identifiable script, and no confirmed origin. Linguists, cryptographers, and even military code breakers have tried, and failed, to decipher its meaning. But in 2018, researchers at the University of Alberta tried something radical. They trained an AI model to decode the Voynich text using Hebrew as a base. Why Hebrew? Because some letter patterns appeared similar in structure and frequency. The AI claimed up to 80% of the words matched Hebrew roots. One sentence allegedly translated to, "She made recommendations to the priest, man of the house, and me." Hope surged. For a moment, it seemed like the code was finally cracked. But then, the scholars stepped in. Linguists and Hebraist reviewed the results and quickly dismissed them. The grammar was off. The syntax made no sense. The translation lacked coherence. It was a mirage. Then came another theory, Proto-Romance, a lost language spoken by medieval nuns. But it too unraveled under scrutiny, and so the Voynich manuscript remains what it has always been, a riddle wrapped in parchment. Artificial intelligence has taken its swing. So have humans. Yet the book just smiles back in silence, daring us to try again. Where the Voynich manuscript taunts in silence, the glyphs of the Maya speak, if you know how to listen. For centuries, the intricate carvings of the ancient Maya baffled explorers and scholars. These weren't just letters, they were spirals within spirals, divine beasts entwined with symbols of kingship, astronomy and sacrifice. A single glyph could contain an entire sentence. And no two stelae ever looked quite the same. It wasn't until the 1950s that linguist Yuri Nerozov cracked the phonetic component of the Maya script, revealing that it wasn't purely symbolic, it was a language with sound and grammar. But decoding was slow. Each glyph took weeks, sometimes months, to identify. Then AI entered the jungle. A project known as Artful Algorithms, led by researchers at West Virginia University, combined art history and computer science to change the game. AI was trained to isolate, classify, and segment individual Mayan glyphs from massive databases of scanned stelae, codices, and temple walls. The results, stunning. In seconds, machines could now identify symbols that took humans years to decipher. Some told tales of cosmic alignments. Others recorded offerings made to gods with names like Edzamna and Kukulkan. But most, they chronicled daily life, farming cycles, noble births, even debts between towns. For the first time in human history, the stones began to speak. And what they said wasn't always divine, sometimes it was deeply human. 2,000 years before the alphabet spread across the ancient Mediterranean, another writing system thrived on the island of Cyprus. Known as Cypro-Minoan, this script etched onto clay tablets, votive stands, and cylinder seals has remained undeciphered for over a century. It was used between 1550 and 1050 years before the birth of Christ, during the Bronze Age, when city-states traded copper, wine, and textiles across the sea. For decades, scholars argued, was it a single script, or three entirely separate ones? But then came the algorithms. Using unsupervised deep learning, researchers trained models to examine the visual structure of every known Cypro-Minoan symbol. What they uncovered was radical patterns of grammar, repetition, and stylistic consistency pointing to a single, unified writing system. Even more provocative was the connection these AI systems began to make. Some signs bore striking similarities to Linear A, the script of Minoan Crete, and even early Semitic languages. Could this mean that ancient seafarers, perhaps even Proto-Phoenicians, shared knowledge with the Cypriots? Though Cypro-Minoan remains untranslated, AI is narrowing the field. Like a digital archaeologist, it's uncovering syntax, clustering verbs, and flagging high-frequency glyphs that might be keys to unlocking grammar. The stones of Cyprus are whispering again, and the machines are learning to listen. Long before the rise of Rome, an ancient people ruled central Italy. They built massive temples, engineered advanced drainage systems, and traded gold across the Mediterranean. They were the Etruscans, and they spoke a language that no one alive today can fully understand. The Etruscan script has been known for centuries. We found thousands of inscriptions on mirrors, urns, sarcophagi, and monuments. Yet despite the quantity, we still can't read it fluently. Why? Because Etruscan is a language isolate. It has no known relatives, no Rosetta Stone, no living descendants. But that hasn't stopped artificial intelligence. In recent years, researchers began feeding large collections of Etruscan texts into neural networks, algorithms designed to detect structure, repetition, and grammar in human language. What they found was startling. AI flagged recurring suffixes that appeared to behave like verb endings. It noticed clusters of words that showed consistent placement, perhaps indicating nouns, titles, or even prayers. These models can now suggest parts of speech, verbs, pronouns, determiners, with increasing confidence. And beyond the grammar lies something deeper. The AI is helping us glimpse Etruscan rituals, funeral rites, and even snippets of their religion. Not from myths or legends, but from the actual voices carved into stone over 2,000 years ago. They spoke of gods we no longer know, of customs long forgotten, but now, slowly, their voices are returning. And so, Europe's lost language is no longer silent. Across continents and millennia, we've journeyed through charred scrolls, mysterious scripts, buried languages, and encoded symbols many once thought lost forever. But now, the past is waking up. From the oracle bones of ancient China to the Danube script in prehistoric Europe, from the secrets of Inca khipus to the hidden truths inside the Dead Sea Scrolls, one truth echoes louder than ever. The past never stopped speaking. We just didn't know how to listen. Now we do. Artificial intelligence. Our modern oracle has become the ultimate decipherer. Unbound by time, tireless in its curiosity, it scans, it learns, it connects dots we never even saw. It's peeling back layers of history like never before. But here's the mystery that lingers in the air. If machines can resurrect voices silenced for thousands of years, if technology can give the forgotten a second life, what else might we uncover? Will we one day decode entire philosophies lost in the flames of ancient libraries? Might we recover forbidden knowledge, or encounter truths humanity wasn't meant to know? And if AI can now speak with the past, what happens when it begins writing the future? Ask yourself. When the dead begin to speak, will we be wise enough to understand them? And if the gods of old encoded their secrets in stone, in scrolls, in silent symbols, perhaps they weren't writing for their own time, but for ours. If this journey through forgotten tongues and awakened texts made you wonder what else lies hidden, then subscribe and join us as we listen to the ancient world whisper back. Like the video if you believe knowledge should never stay buried. And remember, the next mystery might already be beneath your feet.